My name is Olivia Giles. I am the Louisiana Nurses Political Action Committee Secretary and Treasurer. LANPAC is conducting interviews with candidates for our state legislature. We want to learn more about where the candidates stand on issues important to nurses and the health and welfare of our citizens. LANPAC solicited input from the nurses in our state, and then the LANPAC board finalized questions from the top issues submitted. These questions were sent to our candidates prior to their interview. I am delighted to welcome Mr. Andrew Bennett, who is running for District 85 in our state legislature. Candidate Bennett, I would like to turn it over to you for brief opening remarks prior to us moving forward with the questions.
Hi. I first want to start with a shout out to my good friend Quentin Fee. He has been one of my best friends for a very long time. He is a nurse. He currently is now in Florida, but he started here in Louisiana, and we lived together right after we graduated college, and he graduated nursing school, which was right before the pandemic. So his first year as a nurse, he stepped up and did some, pretty incredible and pretty tough work. And I'm super proud of him and super proud to be his friend. But my name is Andrew Bennett. I live here in Terrytown. I'm running for District 85, which is Gretna and Terrytown. I'm 26 years old, and I'm running with a strong emphasis on worker empowerment. I believe that the problems facing this state and the problems facing our institutions could best be solved by the people who actually work within them. For example, I do believe that our nurses and all of our healthcare workers know what is best for our patients and for our healthcare institutions. I think that in education, our teachers are the best ones for that, and so on and so on in all of these industries. I am running as an independent, and I am running without accepting donations from corporations. So, for example, health insurance companies, pharmaceutical industry. I believe that some of these big money institutions tend to have a pretty big seat at the table when it comes to directing policy. And so I don't want to be involved with that. I want to be involved with our workers. And so I believe that as many seats at the table, or all of them, should be filled by healthcare workers when it comes to deciding healthcare policy. And I also believe in expanding many different kinds of social safety nets, including more access to public education, housing, anything that we can do, nutrition, anything we can do to reduce poverty and reduce crime and reduce, poor health in our population. So that's who I am. I'm happy to be here, and thank you so much for, having me and asking me questions about what I want to do for nurses in Louisiana.
Thank you for those remarks. Now I will read question 1. So question 1 is about healthcare disparities. Prior to COVID-19, we recognize healthcare services are not accessible on an equitable basis nationally and in Louisiana. Healthcare is only 20% of what accounts for one's health status, and the social determinants of health are the non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. What strategies do you have to assist with reducing the social determinants of health impact on the citizens of Louisiana?
So I think in order to reduce those impacts, we have to reduce poverty. Healthy People 2030 identified the 5 social determinants of health as economic stability, access to education, access to healthcare, and environment and community. And all of those are greatly impacted by poverty. So I think that we need to use state dollars to invest in our communities, building people up from the ground up. So I think we need to fund education. We need to fund healthcare. We need to repair and innovate our infrastructure. We need to provide better access to nutritious foods, guarantee safe housing. And I think also in order to accomplish all of that, we have to pass some campaign finance reform because there are some special interests that don't want those things to happen because it might hurt their profit margin, for example. And so I think we need to address that to kind of get to the root cause of why we are not investing in our people. And then, yes, of course, I do want to invest in our people and especially our children. And I think that if we can truly combat poverty, not only will we improve health outcomes and limit those social determinant of health negative impacts, but we'll reduce crime. We will reduce, poor access to opportunity. And so, yeah, that's what I believe. I think we got to go after poverty, and that can lead to, better health outcomes.
All right, we'll move on to question 2, which talks about faculty shortage in education. How would you advocate for federal and state funding to support recruitment and retention of nursing faculty to reduce the nursing shortage?
So I do not believe that we can spend too much as a state when it comes to, supporting our healthcare workers, supporting our nurses, from education all the way through, into our nurses' careers. So I support up to complete public funding of our healthcare system. I support universal healthcare. I support, expanded pay and benefits for nurses. I support 6-week paid mandatory leave. I support pensions. And so, look, if we can actually invest in our nurses, if we can invest in their education and make sure that once they are doing the incredibly important job that they do, that they are paid properly and have proper benefits, then we're not going to have any kind of nursing shortage or nursing problems. It's a matter of our state investing in nurses and investing in our healthcare system. There are other places where this issue does not exist because there is just proper public funding put in place. So I believe absolutely as much federal or state funding as possible into our healthcare system and into our nurses. Not only will that be good for nurses, but it's going to be good for patients. It's going to be good for public health. It's just the smart thing to do. And so we need to, I think, support elected officials who are going to make that a priority, no matter what, special interest is potentially lobbying against those solutions.
Thank you. We will move on to question 3, which is actually a 2-part question. So I will proceed with reading the first part. Gun violence continues to roar through our communities. Schools, houses of worship, shopping malls, grocery stores, outdoor gatherings, and etc. What factors do you see as critical to bringing an end to these senseless acts? And do you have a strategy to address this problem?
So I think that the problem is that we just don't have common sense legislation to address this. I support, expanding background checks, safe storage laws, psychological checks for those who want to purchase weapons, waiting periods, assault weapons bans. These are things that, the vast majority of people, including the majority of people in Louisiana, believe in, that we need to do to reduce gun violence. And I absolutely support that legislation. which is why my campaign has been awarded the 2023 Moms Demand Action Gun Sense Candidate Distinction. I do think that, yes, we have the Second Amendment, but that right does not supersede the right for our citizens to live safely and not in constant fear, especially our children. I've grown up during the era of school shootings. I remember being in 10th grade health class watching the TV when the Sandy Hook shooting happened. Um, of course, that was awful, but it was also just really scary because I have two little brothers, were around the age of those victims, which was horrible and tragic. And my parents are both teachers. So this is something that, is constantly in the back of my mind, and I really want to address it and fix it and make sure that everyone in Louisiana is safer. And as far as factors that I think are critical to fixing this, um, I think we have to address gerrymandering in this state. Our legislative districts are drawn in a way that solidifies the power of people who are already in power. And what that does is make it that so that those in power are not very representative of Louisiana as a whole and what we believe in. And that's why a lot of the things that we all seem to agree on just aren't happening up at the Capitol. And so I think that we really need to address that. And that could mean things like protests or acts of civil disobedience. Some real like community organizing, with your neighbors to make our voices be heard, that we are not going to stand anymore for, the gun violence epidemic that we're experiencing.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the second part of that question, which has to do with fentanyl test strips. Rapid fentanyl test strips can be used to determine if drugs have been mixed or cut with fentanyl. With important information about fentanyl, healthcare providers can take steps to reduce the community risk of overdose. How would you support legislation to make rapid fentanyl test strips more readily available?
Um, I promise I will, as soon as possible, sponsor legislation allocating state funds to acquiring or distributing these rapid fentanyl test strips wherever. This should be an enormous priority in our capital. I really can't believe that it's not at the moment. I know it's going to cost money, but again, I don't care. I think these lives that will be saved by this legislation are priceless. I don't think you could ask a family member of someone who has, died because of a fentanyl overdose. I bet if you ask them, they wouldn't think it's too expensive. Um, there is no cost too high. We need to invest in making sure that our people are healthy, our people are safe, and so that everybody in Louisiana can, live a great life of opportunity. Addiction is something that needs to be treated like the healthcare crisis it is. Um, these are human beings. They're our neighbors. They're our family members. We need to approach this with love and compassion and fund whatever it takes to save lives in this state.
Okay, now we will move on to our next question, which is access to care. Are you supportive of actions to remove arbitrary barriers that prevent all healthcare practitioners, including advanced practice registered nurses, from practicing to the full extent of their education, licensure, and training?
Absolutely, I support removing these barriers. Um, I want to let our healthcare practitioners do what they have been educated and trained to do. Um, there are people who need healing, who need attention, who need this work to be done, and I don't see any reason to limit our practitioners when they could be providing quality care, and being paid properly to do so. I think it would streamline care and reduce costs, and it would let talented people do what they know how to do. Okay, these are professionals. These are people who can do good work, can make this place healthier, and I don't see any reason for there to be red tape there in that process.
Okay, so now we're going to transition to some general questions. And there's two of those. The first question is, what are your legislative priorities?
So, like I said, worker empowerment. So that includes, pay raises, raising the minimum wage, industry level minimum wages as well, supporting our labor unions, things like that. I want to raise teacher and support staff salaries. We have a crisis in public education right now in Louisiana. Just here in Jefferson Parish, they have shut down schools. I think it was like 6 or 7 schools that they just shut down rather than fund them. It's a big problem. I am also a big supporter of universal breakfast and lunch for all public schools, regardless of income level. I support campaign finance laws because I think there's a big problem with corruption, and a smaller group of people with a lot of money who are, influencing our politics through, corporate donations and things like that. I want to fully legalize medical and recreational marijuana. I also believe that we need to repeal the abortion bans in this state. I believe that that's healthcare, and I don't think that the government should be banning healthcare, especially when that legislation is being drafted by mostly older men, and that is going to affect mostly younger women's bodies. I want to regulate health insurance companies to lower costs. I want to regulate our hospitals and our healthcare facilities so that the staff are properly paid, including nurses, of course, and that patients are properly cared for, and that those who run those facilities are held accountable regardless of what salary that they pay themselves. And I want to reduce addiction related death. I want to fund sobriety programs. I want to treat that as the health crisis it is, and help as many people as possible. And that's all I can think of right now. There's, of course, probably more. There is more, but those are my priorities right now.
Okay, so this is the last question. Why should the Louisiana nursing community support you as the best candidate for this legislative seat?
So when it comes time for legislation to be drafted, voted on, the legislators in there right now, if you can imagine, that they have their own little table, and they provide seats to everyone at that table. And for many of them, those seats include health insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, hospital executives, and there's not many seats for nurses. For me, the only people who will be sitting at my table are the workers, right, for any issue. So when it comes to healthcare, I'm only going to be taking the advice of nurses and doctors and the techs and all of the individuals who actually make our healthcare system run. Because all these other institutions that are mostly, financially based or only really care about making money, they are not the voices that I'm interested in listening to. the only voices in my ear when it comes to this are going to be our healthcare workers and are going to be our nurses. I do not know everything that there is to know about the issues facing our healthcare system. I'm happy to admit that. But when it comes to being educated on these issues and knowing what I should do using my power in the government should I be elected, I'll only be listening to the voices of those workers. So I think in that way, I'm someone that can be trusted. I want to be, the way I sometimes phrase it is that people like to talk about elected officials being puppets to whatever institutions that fund them. I like to see myself as a puppet of Louisiana workers. I would love to be a puppet for our nurses. That would be an honor if that's the way that helps you look at it. But I just want to put workers first. My parents are teachers. I've grown up seeing firsthand what it is like for people to do an incredibly important job that is foundational to our society and be underpaid, overworked, and underappreciated. And so that unfortunately is happening to our nurses as well. It's heartbreaking, it's terrible. But I promise that if elected, I'm going to do everything in my power to support our nurses. And I think you could trust me on that.
Okay, thank you, Candidate Bennett. At this time, I would like to give you 2 minutes to give closing remarks.
All right. Again, my name is Andrew Bennett. Thank you to all the nurses who are watching right now. Thank you to Olivia for asking these questions and hosting this interview. I think I kind of went on in my last question about what I can do for nurses. So I hope that I can count on your support. I promise I'll do everything to be your champion. If you are interested in supporting my campaign, individually, you can go to andrewforlouisiana.com. You can find out more about what I stand for and get involved in any way. If you're in Gretna or Tarrytown, I look forward to meeting you. I've been out knocking on doors for a while now, and I look forward to meeting and talking to as many nurses as possible and hearing from you what it is that I can do to support you. And so again, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to finishing out this primary and whatever the future may hold in this election. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And goodbye.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your responses, and good luck with your campaign. And I want to wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I hope you have a great day too.